Welcome to Behind the Mic, a podcast from the Concrete Foundations Association featuring discussions with some of the leading professionals in today's concrete industry. This series features interviews recorded at the World of Concrete 2020 conference in Las Vegas. And in this episode, Doug Herbert, president of Herbert Construction Company from Marietta, Georgia, discusses his family's history in the concrete construction industry. Doug is passionate about helping and teaching other contractors, so let's see what he has to say behind the mic.
All right, so good afternoon. We're at World of Concrete 2020 in Las Vegas. It has been a great day so far, day one of the show here at World of Concrete. Found a chance to sit down with Doug Herbert, president of Herbert Construction Company, Marietta, Georgia. Doug, thanks for joining the podcast a little bit.
Glad to be here, Jim.
Just a little bit of background. Obviously, we have a relationship. You're a member of the Concrete Foundations Association. You're currently our vice president, incoming president for the association. But you've got a long history in the industry, a second-generation contractor. Your family got started in Michigan. Tell us just a little bit about what your memories of concrete construction in Michigan are.
Yes, they did get started. My mom and dad started the company in 1978. They borrowed just enough money from my mom's parents to build some wood forms and use Gates hardware for that to build, I think it was 100 feet of wall. Yeah. That was in 78. And so I grew up in the business. Before I could work out on the job, I heard about it at the dinner table. They worked out of their home for so many years. And when I was young, during summer breaks, my dad would drop me off at one job site in the morning and pick me up in the afternoon. Wow. I was too small to set form, so I was a gopher. And at the time, even in high school, I would work every summer out on the job. And at that time, I really almost didn't like it because all my friends were out chasing girls and lounging by the lakes in Michigan. Right. But in hindsight, that was the best thing for me. It gave me a really good work ethic. I learned the business truly from the ground up. And I think that's the way a lot of second-generation people get into the business. They just start by hearing about it, by digging footings, and then eventually setting wall. And I did the same thing. That was my path. And once I graduated from high school, I went part-time to college for construction supervision and management and still worked at the company and just worked my way up. Finally came into the office. I handled our layout for a long time. That's when we purchased the first robotic total station for any residential contractor. Before that, they were just primarily used for strip mines and road building. Okay. And we really kind of introduced the robotic total stations to the concrete foundation industry, specifically residential foundation contractors. And after that, was an account manager, an estimator, and just really followed that typical path that you see a lot of second-generation people follow.
So if you had to think back, what age would you have been introduced to the process? Like, when do you think you had your first pseudo job as a foundation contractor or as a gopher?
Yeah, early teens. Early teens, yes,
wow.
Yeah. Way before child labor laws were enacted.
That's right.
Yeah. And fortunately, our company did a lot of farm work at that time. So it wasn't really commercial work. It was residential and farm work. Right. And the farmers are used to having their own kids out there working. So we didn't get any type of an issue with me working as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old.
Right. And so then, of course, your family then decided to make a big move.
Yes.
And Dad and Mom picked up the whole family, moved you guys to Georgia.
Yes.
Atlanta, Georgia area, Marietta.
Right.
What did that transition feel like for you as because you're now engaged in the business? What did that feel like for you?
It was exciting. So we were based out of Southwest Michigan, really between Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids, Southwest Michigan, and we were a very big fish in a very small pond. Okay. And at the time, it was my parents, my sister, my brother, and I, the four families, and that wasn't the market that was going to get us to where we wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And so we realized, just like a lot of Midwestern companies, you work for 7 or 8 months out of the year, and then the 3 or 4 months of winter, you just kind of sit around. The payments still go on, but you're just not doing very much. A lot of times you do a job, but you can't charge for the winter charges, and so you lose money on jobs. And that just wasn't attractive to us anymore. And so we initially wanted to just find a warm weather satellite office where we could keep our headquarters in Michigan, but also have a place somewhere in the southeast, a separate satellite office where they could work year-round, and then we'd run both. And so my dad took about a year on and off, looking around the south and southeast, going to a bunch of different cities, trying to figure out what the markets looked like. We finally settled on Atlanta. and it was fantastic. A move like that always takes longer and costs a lot more than what you ever expect it would. But after running both operations for a year, we all just wanted to be in Atlanta. It was just it's a dynamic city. It was at the time, it still is. It's a big pond for us to be a small fish in, so there's plenty of room to maneuver. And it was just an easy transition mentally to say, okay, this is where we want to be. And I give my parents a lot of credit. At that time in their lives, being established, having friends, growing up in Southwest Michigan, of course, their whole lives, I really give them a lot of credit for having the guts and the ambition and the drive. At that same time, a lot of their friends were starting to slow down, buying Harleys or an old sports car to refurbish, and yet they are taking on this next great adventure. So I give them a lot of credit. I admire them a lot for that, and I'm so happy we did it.
Oh, that's great. So, of course, you're connected with the Concrete Foundations Association. We
Right.
talk a lot about the value of networking and how that changes you as a contractor. I've always been curious, how much of an impact did Barry's peers have during that time of moving and identifying this is the place that we should go?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually knew a fellow CFA member who had an office on the south side of Atlanta.
Okay.
And once we identified Atlanta as the place we wanted to be, I went to Atlanta with a crew for 6 or 8 weeks and looked for work and just wanted to feel what the market was like, knowing we'd go back to Michigan. It was kind of a fact-finding mission. And I came back, we thought about it, and we realized that if we could purchase a company in Atlanta, we could really hit the ground running. Instead of starting it and growing it organically, taking a lot of time to ramp up. So we thought, let's try to acquire a company. So we were able to approach that fellow CFA member and ask him to sell us his northern satellite office, and he did, and that was instrumental in us really hitting the ground. We, in effect, purchased the manpower and the customer base, and that really allowed us to get moving quickly.
Fantastic. And obviously, yeah, having that customer base is huge then. The reputation of that company, and now you kind of bring your own culture to that.
Right.
And you've got an interesting culture because Dad, Mom started the business, you got involved in it, and I know your sister. And the interesting from my perspective is I first really got to know your sister because she was a board member of the CFA, followed your dad into the board position.
Yes.
So now the two of you are really running the company.
We are.
How did that dynamic come about? And talk to just a little bit about your relationship with Amanda.
Sure. Amanda's fantastic. She's a great business partner for me. And my parents are still really involved in the company. I think my dad has done a great job of, once I became president, I think he did a great job of slowly starting to remove himself from a lot of the day-to-day interactions. And I still talk with him every day. And when he's in town, he's at the office still. And I'm always bouncing things off from him. It's just great to have him as a resource. But Amanda is really involved in the day-to-day operation. She schedules the crew, she schedules the concrete, and she's a really good business partner. I am just naturally more aggressive. I want to keep pushing the business, keep going forward. And Amanda is a great limiter almost to that, just in regards we're the yin and the yang.
Right, kind of a stabilizer.
She is, and I need that. And so she's always thinking about, all right, does this mean we're going more into debt? Or can we accomplish this? And in my mind, I just want to keep pushing. She's really good limiter for me for that. And she's fantastic. She wants to grow as well, but she's that, yeah, but what if? And I think every company needs to have both of those types of people in their business.
So one of the comments that you offer is your own personality is really about challenging the company to go further, to be more, to do more. This is an industry where many would say there's no change here.
Right.
We've been doing the same thing for the last 50 years.
Yes.
So what does innovation mean to you in this industry, the residential foundation industry, and Cast in Place?
Sure. I think that encompasses just about every part of our business. Okay. I just talked with here at the World of Concrete is a robot that ties rebar for bridges. She told me that when they researched the industry, the most resistant industry to change is hunting. The second is construction.
Wow.
And so we have so much room to grow and to excel. And in a way, that's a competitive advantage to any concrete contractor that has the mindset of finding the new technology, finding a better way of doing things. They're instantly going to have an advantage over the rest of their competitors who are just traditional. That's the way we've always done things. And so I mentioned we were the first in the nation to have a robotic total station. We're constantly searching out ways of replacing man hours. Is there a way of buying a machine that can replace a man with the labor problems that everybody is facing? But that also goes even towards marketing. When I think about how to market our company, I don't look at what other concrete contractors are doing. I look at what other industries are doing. Okay. What are the direct mail people doing? What are the IT companies doing? How are they marketing their businesses? And I want to mold that into concrete construction for something that people just haven't seen before. And that is a huge advantage for any construction company that wants to get ahead and move above their competition.
So then I would surmise that your perception is from your customers that they're finding that, they're gravitating towards that, they're appreciating that kind of modern take on your relationship building and also the productivity, the quality of control and assurance. Do you sense that from your building customers, that they do actually appreciate that?
Yes, I really do. I think that first they see it as when they're just a prospect and we don't have a relationship with them. They see that in our marketing. They see that how we're communicating with them, that we're different than other concrete contractors. We want to be the most visible. You know, I've always said that if we could be everybody's first call after they've had a problem with their current contractor, we'd rule Atlanta or wherever market you're in. If you can be that top of mind awareness to where, okay, they finally, their concrete contractor got their foundation out of square the last time, who are they going to call? If we can be that person, we're going to have as much work as what we can handle. So getting back with the differences, they see that difference in our marketing. When they contact us for an estimate, they see that we get the estimate back to them a lot faster. We communicate a lot better. When they become a customer, we send them a new client welcome kit, which is a big box of stuff saying welcome to the company. We're trying to remove any type of buyer's remorse they may have. They see that that's different. And then as they're working with us, I hear so many builders complain, and general contractors as well, that they just don't have good communication with a concrete contractor. And that's simple. You don't have to buy anything to do that. You just have to communicate. Even if you know it's not something that they want to hear. You know, they want you there on Tuesday, but you can't get there until Friday. You still call them on Monday or return their call on Monday and say, sorry, we can't be there on Tuesday. We'll be there on Friday. Even though they don't want to hear it, they're so happy because a lot of other concrete contractors just simply won't call them until they finally show up on Friday. So they're seeing that difference throughout the entire process, and that's one of my goals.
And really, let's keep in mind that this is in an industry that doesn't accept price deviation, price changes. So you don't have the capability to be higher necessarily, but appreciate that you can move your prices up as you gain trust, and trust value is really important in our industry. But I get a sense from you that it's the intangible differences that make you that call.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Jim. I want to charge as much as we possibly can and still get the work, obviously. I do not want to be known in any of the markets that we're ever in as the low-cost guy, but I think that we can differentiate ourselves enough to where they will pay up to about 5 or 8% more than other people, just because of the way that they work with us. I think anything more than 8% and the additional services, they just can't justify that. So I don't want to be lower, and I'd rather not be even, I'd rather be higher, but I know that there's a limit to that. But with the things that we do and how we interact with them, how we handle our company, they do get a sense that, okay, this is a different company, and there's a difference between the value you get from us and the price, as there isn't anything.
So when you talk about transition and cutting edge and kind of being new, one take on that can be challenging yourself to do new things, to take on new projects, to extend yourself into the extraordinary.
Right.
Can you think of a project that really has taken you too far, where it's been too challenging or it's been really uncomfortable, but maybe it ended up being rewarding in the end?
I might be working on a project like that right now.
Very good.
We'll wait and see the end result. It's a really well-known artist who was commissioned by the City of Atlanta to put in a structure at a park, City of Atlanta Park, and he wants to build a concrete building and have it look like it's really old. So when we strip the forms, no patching of honeycomb. We do break the ties, but he wants it to look old and wild. And so I like projects like that. I like interesting things.
Right.
We can do regular basement day in and day out. I like these interesting things. However, I've spent a lot of time on this. I just looked back. Our original bid was 2 years ago.
Oh, my.
And I am the one that's involved in this. I haven't handed this off to somebody else in our company, but that may be an example of wanting to do something really cool.
Right.
But when we do the final cost analysis on that, we may not find that's a very profitable job. There's no market for that. You can't say, okay, now we're going to go after artists in Atlanta that have been commissioned by the city of Atlanta
Right.
to do something. It's more of a feather in our cap type project. I might be justifying it at this point, but
But that's okay, because at the same time, it's a high-profile job.
It is.
It's going to create a certain amount of awareness about you as a leader in the industry.
It really will.
What you just don't want it to happen, I'm sure, is that now every project invitation is about the extraordinary.
Right, unless we charge a whole lot more for it.
Or
right.
Amanda's going to have something to say about that.
Right, exactly.
Hold back.
Yes.
So we've had great interactions. We've been blessed to have you as a speaker at our convention because you bring a freshness of perspective. You've evidenced that already here today. And you have a different passion also that kind of parallels your passion for pursuing your company in the way you do. And that's really about the other contractor, your peer, helping them to advance through their knowledge, through your work, your research, and your implementation. Talk a little bit about Profitable Contractor.
Yes, Profitable Contractor is it's a separate company that I created, and it's really I love doing it. I've been a concrete contractor my whole life. I see so many really good concrete contractors through the CFA. Fantastic businessmen, great people, and concrete construction in the whole, just in its entirety, the people work so hard for not a lot of profit. We risk so much. We have a lot of employees, and we risk so much for actually a pretty small amount of profit compared to other industries. And I think that's a real shame because we are great people. The world needs concrete contractors. And when I started to really figure out how to market and sell our company, the sales came a lot easier. And the CFA asked me to talk about that, and I just got a lot of people asking about that end of it because usually you just don't learn about that. A lot of concrete contractors were really good form setters at one point, and then they went into business on their own. And so maybe they don't have that sales and marketing or how to set up systems in their business or even how to hire good people. So I created Profitable Contractor to help concrete contractors make better marketing decisions, sell their company better, distinguish themselves from their competition, establish systems within their business so that they get repeatable results. And it's just been a labor of love for me. I really enjoy it. I'm the full-time president of Herbert Construction and working in the trenches day in and day out, but I also really, really love working on the Profitable Contractor stuff, that side of it.
Because I've certainly heard you talk about having to go out and drive a knuckle boom and
Yes.
deliver forms.
Right.
And so
Recently. Right.
So one of the concepts that we see repeatedly as we get introduced to concrete contractors across the country is the difference between those companies that own a job
Right.
versus owning a business.
Yes.
How do you define the difference between those two?
Such a great distinction. Yes. And you see this in construction, all different subcontractor types in construction where they were good at what they were doing. They started their own business. They liked the idea of determining their own work hours and finally building wealth and being able to see their kids' ball game. And what ends up happening is they get so involved in their business that they have just created a job for them. And so I define that primarily as, can you get away? Can you come to World of Concrete here for a week? And does business still keep going back home?
Right.
Are you still pouring concrete? Are you still invoicing jobs? Are you still estimating? And so it's very difficult to get from being in your job to finally owning a company and having that work still go on without you. That's a huge step to be the guy that invoices or estimates at night, and during the day he lays out and he manages crews. Even if he's not actually setting forms, he still just has a job. The work does not continue to go on. And so that is, for most contractors, the biggest, most difficult step is to jump up from that. Find a way of creating systems in their business, finally start delegating, let some things happen without you.
Right.
Even if it's done 80% as good as you could have done it, it still is going to get done by delegating. Then you're finally starting to own a company instead of just owning a job. And then the magic happens, because then you can really start working on other parts of your company. You can start building wealth. You can finally start getting home in time to see your kid's ball game.
Oh, yeah. So can you think of a time then, stepping back to history now, can you find a time in your memory where that kind of switch happened for you, where you saw this is not about owning my job, but really realizing this is my future, this is my career, this is my chance to create something?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I started thinking about, okay, how can I get more work done?
Okay.
And I tried to take that on myself, and it just didn't work. I just started burning myself into the ground just like anybody else would. I started to read a lot of books on delegating and setting up systems, and that was the real turning point. And my dad was a good proponent of that as well. He always believed that if he was the best wall setter, he wouldn't have to do that all the time in order for his company to still be good. He was comfortable teaching somebody how to do that. And I kind of followed suit with that and realized that, yes, I can do a lot of things, but in order for us to really grow and get to the next level, I'm going to need to delegate, and we're going to have to keep creating more and more systems within the business.
Which really isn't easy, because it doesn't matter what your industry is or life in general, your role in an organization, you
Right.
serve on a board. Training your replacement is the hardest thing for people to learn how to do and to feel comfortable doing that.
Yes.
And so you've got to be willing to give those keys over. I sense from you that Barry did that very gracefully to you and Amanda. He's
Sure
still
did.
involved.
Yes.
But it's been a graceful transition. Can you think of a time when you've learned that really first tough lesson in business, in the concrete industry, that really shocked you into reality? Hey, wait a second, I am responsible for this. Which, by the way, listeners, this is not one of those episodes that I try to make people cry. We're not trying to dig back that well. It's not ESPN 30 for 30 or anything like that.
There will not be a crying moment.
Right.
We're contractors, damn it.
Yeah, that's
Darn
right.
it. I'm sorry.
That's right. But I'm always curious about the lessons learned. And I hear so many of those lessons learned in and around the CFA that's shared because of your trust, again, with each other. So that was the question. I was
Sure.
curious to see if you could recall one that quickly.
Right. I can't think of one right now. I know that it's happened. I know something smacked me in the face.
Right.
I always try to, before making a big decision, just run it past my dad,
Yeah.
honestly. And sometimes I'm just looking for an accomplice more than, more than.
That's right.
I've heard that before. Sometimes you're asking for an accomplice more than good opinion, but he's certainly helped me out in so many ways. But I have had to learn a lot of lessons, and that's just
Part of the life.
part of business.
And you've got a great peer network. So the thing that
Oh,
I
yeah.
know about you is
Yes.
that you've grown up not just in the concrete industry, but also in the CFA.
Oh,
you
yeah.
started attending events as one of those little 3-foot-tall
Kids running
runabouts,
around.
kids running around.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of kids here today that have run around with you.
Yes.
What does business feel like to you, having that kind of trusted peer relationship that you've met through this industry?
It's like a safety net. I am constantly asking contractor friends that I met through the CFA, I'm constantly calling them or just seeing them at an event like this and just bouncing things off from them. It's been fantastic. It truly is like a safety net, like working with a safety net below you, to be able to call and say, hey, here's what's going on. And sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, we ran into that last year, here's what we did.
Right.
Other times they'll say, well, yeah, we're kind of facing the same thing. Here's what we tried that didn't work. And it's like a time machine, being able to not make those mistakes because somebody else has gone through it and figured it out. You can leap great bounds forward just by getting that advice from them. And so it's been fantastic. And I've created lifelong friendships, true friendships, that if I was not in the concrete industry tomorrow, I still would be friends with so many of these people and stay in touch. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, real salt of the earth, real true personalities that you
Yes.
engage in this industry, also in the association. When you think of that, the safety nets, you talked about your dad as being that trusted advisor, safety net for you. Your peers, in a way, are trusted value.
Yeah.
You've lived professionally through the Great Recession,
Yep.
and really a challenge not just to your business, but to everybody around you. Now you've got people you're training up in the industry you've got to, at this point, begin to see them taking over for you. And now we've got listeners that are going to be on this podcast wondering what the future may hold for them. What do you see as the biggest business risk, perhaps industry risk, as we look forward?
Yeah, I do believe it's manpower.
Manpower.
Yep, that's a current problem, and I think that will just continue. I think that for quite a while now, we've been discouraging kids to go into the trades, that the only thing to do after high school is go to college. And I think that a lot of those years of training will have an impact on us for many years. So I think that'll be the biggest challenge. I think it will probably require us to, or sort of force us to, keep looking at new technology, keep figuring out ways of replacing men with machines. And in one way that will be good for the industry to move us forward and get us out of that really slow to change type mentality.
Right.
It's a shame that it's going to take that in order to make that happen. But I do think that will be the biggest challenge. I think there are really smart young guys out there that are hungry and that do want to make their mark in concrete construction. I'm excited about that. But that will, the manpower and getting the work done will continue to be an issue.
And so I sense that it's probably going to take that balance between hunger, creativity, passion from a young man that wants to control his future.
Right.
With the right technique, the right courage to engage technology in a way and really trust that it can play a big role, even though it's going to come at a pretty high price.
Yes, it will. Yeah. Yeah. Any type of investment like that, though, is probably going to pay off. I mean, we're comfortable purchasing a $400,000 boom truck. As concrete contractors, we're comfortable with purchasing a $500,000 pump truck. And so, or even an excavator, a dozer, whatever. And so that mentality does have to come back more into the office, more into layout, operations. Along those lines, I do think money will have to be spent at concrete construction companies for retention of employees and training of employees. I think that's always money well spent. So we do have to shift our thinking and saying, okay, I'm comfortable spending this much over here for this big piece of equipment, but I do need to be comfortable spending it in other areas in order to keep these guys that we have and in order to streamline this process.
You've got one chance to talk to a world of potential contractor peers. What's the one piece of advice that you want to give them right now? Realizing that they can connect to you through your other portals, but one piece of advice you want them to hear right now.
Sure, yeah. They can see me at herbertconstruction.com or profitablecontractor.com, of course.
Right.
One piece of advice. Keep learning. Yeah, that's served me well over the years. I think it's necessary in this industry. Keep learning. And that can be in a lot of ways. It can be listening to podcasts just like this, which I find to be extremely helpful. I'm always listening to podcasts or audiobooks on my way to a job site. But also that works with joining the CFA and learning from other contractors that have been there before you. You know, they say you learn the most from the person that's one or two steps above you. And there are so many different concrete contractors within the CFA that wherever you are right now as a concrete contractor and you get plugged into the CFA, you'll find people that are one or two steps above you that you can learn so much from. So keep learning. Yep.
Great message. He's Doug Herbert, president of Herbert Construction Company, Marietta, Georgia. He's also president of profitablecontractor.com. So with those two domains, you can get in touch with him and follow up on maybe something that you've heard that's useful, beneficial to you. There's no doubt that you hear behind us the live action here at World of Concrete in 2020 in Las Vegas. It's buzzing with technology, buzzing with innovation, buzzing with contractors that are interested in taking that next step. And so we want to encourage you with this podcast to think about that. Think about your role in the industry. Think about your future. And think about where do you want to put your resources to make that happen. So thanks for listening. And I hope that you'll join up with one of our next podcasts as we continue to bring some great contractors with a wealth of experience that have a voice that wants to talk to you.
Behind the Mic is brought to you by the Concrete Foundations Association. You can learn more about us and about becoming one of our #CFA Concrete Pros by visiting our website, cfaconcretepros.org. If you're a concrete professional interested in being part of a future podcast, reach out to us by email to info@cfaconcretepros.org to start a conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Mic.